Welcome to Faith and Sustainability, a podcast where we look deeper into how our faith traditions inspire us to care for our common home. I'm your host, Leonard Robinson.
And I'm Kat Doyle. The podcast is made possible from the generous support of Jaime Lanier, the Varlamov Family Foundation, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, St. Francis Services, and Semco Atlanta. And Leonard, I understand today that our guest is actually one of those generous supporters. We have Jaime Lanier with us today.
Jaime, welcome to the Faith and Sustainability Podcast.
Thank you, Leonard and Kat.
All right, tell us a little bit about what you do and what the Ray C. Anderson Foundation does.
Well, I'm a trustee of the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. Ray is the founder of Interface Incorporated, started in 1973, and it was a carpet tile manufacturer commercially, and has evolved to a global company. It's now publicly traded. And the foundation was founded when Ray had passed away in 2011, August of 2011, and left the lion's share of his estate to a foundation to his two daughters, Marianne, my wife, and his other daughter, Harriet Langford. And they really had no roadmap. They could do whatever they want. But Ray became known globally, not necessarily because of being a CEO and founder of a corporation, but he got the sustainability bug in 1994 by reading a book from Paul Hawken, The Ecology of Commerce, and that led him to being the change agent. He felt if any company's got to start it or do it, why not us? So Ray got started by just challenging the company and inviting all of us to join and be a part of it. We had no idea where we were going. We actually had no idea of really what he was talking about in 1994.
That sounds familiar.
It does. I think we've been there. I think one of the most interesting things about the Ray C. Anderson Foundation was their quote from Ray, "What if everybody did it?"
Correct.
And is that sort of the way that you got things started and pushed things along?
Yeah. Initially it was while we were getting it. It was just, what do we do in the company that can make a difference? And it was really just started with efficiencies. Just what can you make that is more efficient that is more efficient within anybody's process and what we were doing. And that led to a lot of different ideas. And one idea kept leading to another, to the point of realizing that it's great to do something for sustainability's sake, but in reality, we also have to look at sustainability as a whole.
Right.
And as we were going through this journey of efficiencies, we were realizing, though, we were negatively impacting other things that affected sustainability. So what we thought could be a 10-year journey really ended up being about a 25-year journey. But we became officially a closed-looped company, meaning anything we take, we could either give back to Mother Nature, or it was incorporated in a recycling mode within how we made the product as well as all of our operations.
So that had to be super tough to do in the petroleum-based industry.
Absolutely. I mean, people thought Ray had lost his mind. Really did. And being a publicly traded company, it made investors very nervous.
Except in California,
That's correct.
We actually mimicked some of Ray's ideas into a green chemistry policy for consumer products. So out in the Wild Wild West, we thought he was a prophet. Him and Bill McDonough, I've had the pleasure of meeting both. And this was prophetic stuff. This is the way policy should go.
Yes.
So not everybody thought.
Yes.
Not everybody thought it was crazy.
So take that all the way till his passing, and then where's it going to go from there? And Interface still is doing all it can, and it's one of the top 5 rated companies in the world doing what they say they're going to do in the area of sustainability. But then, how does this foundation do something?
Right.
So Marianne and Harriet could have done anything. Ray actually had no instructions, no rules, no regulations, wasn't going to rule from the grave. And so he gave them this, and they said, well, we don't know how we're going to do it, but we want to continue this legacy of sustainability in business and community. And so by that time, over 20 plus years, working in the company and realizing what it was doing and its importance, even from a pragmatic perspective, its importance in life, that I was brought in along with my brother-in-law to help advise them. And then within 2 years, they did not have the background to run a foundation at a higher level, and therefore brought in our son, who was a federal tax attorney, but really his passion was continuing his grandfather's legacy, and that has given him the opportunity to do so. And so he runs the Ray C. Anderson Foundation and leads us in the key initiatives that we have now.
So let's back up the time machine a little bit, and let's talk about what you did with the actual interface company when you were there, because you had your eye on sustainability even from the beginning of your work there.
My particular role was sales and marketing, but it was our clients that were actually making us aware of its importance, because we dealt with global architectural and design firms, and they were starting to realize, what does happen to this stuff when you're done making it? And what are you going to do with it when the client doesn't need it anymore? So that involved us in, we want to make sure we take care of the customer. We take care of the customer. They usually want more of what we provide. And therefore, we were getting into dialogues about what we could do. And then they were curious about what we were doing, because they wanted to be able to educate their clients that they were working with on what was a better way and what was a better product and what was going to be more environmentally friendly going forward. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm very, very grateful that even though the foundation, the Ray C. Anderson Foundation, is mutually exclusive from Interface, that we still have a relationship. We still communicate. We still want to do things together when we can. Yet we each have our mission on that. So Interface is to continue leading the way in what manufacturers can do, even not just even for a customer, but being the guideline for our competitors and hopefully other industries that are petroleum-based.
I want to go back to the word journey you used, and let's even turn the clock even further back. How did your faith affect your decisions?
It's funny, except for the creation story, I never thought about how they would relate my faith to environmentalism, or at least doing well by doing good where we live. And I would say within a year, this connection was starting to be made, and to me personally, in realizing that, if we do better in taking care of God's creation, then wouldn't that be better for all as well? And Ray actually had a great term. He called creation God's commerce, and if we can mimic that in industry, we would have no waste. Because when you think of every species that is out there, every species waste is another species food source, which means there is no waste within nature's makeup. So that really was my connection. That was my catalyst going, oh my goodness, that is absolutely true. And then it really made the connection of that we can't take God's creation for granted. We are to be stewards of it. We are to care for it in any way we can to do that.
It's interesting, in your bio, I read that core sustainability values were the things you wanted to make sure that the people that you worked with didn't lose.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about faith and those core sustainability values.
I was fortunate enough to have personal friends as clients, so we could maybe delve into that and have these discussions if they were also faith-based. You can't go, you're there on business, but if you can go there for lunch, you get to have conversations, and then we can actually start discussing about, but what can we affect? How can we really make a difference? And it truly was in small steps, and you had to trust the process of small steps. And in my case, it was doing further education, why Interface was going down the road we were, why were competitors choosing to go in different materials, and maybe we weren't, at least at the time. And that really delved into questions of going further into the weeds about why we're doing what we're doing, and then bring it back the holistic nature that we had talked about later. So it turned out my role ended up being outside of my personal faith, because what faith does, even in your workplace, is it motivates you to do it the right way. And
Amen.
It does. It motivates you. And so I always had that perspective in mind without being religious, if that makes any sense. That was not my job, is to be religious. But my job was to convict in any way, shape, or form a client to knowing that Interface is really someone they needed to go with. And so we would connect the dots about really if they were ready to get into the makeups of vinyl and why certain vinyls were great in one area but not necessarily in another, and then how did they fit in the holistic scheme of things, vinyl being petroleum-based as well, nylon being petroleum-based, then we could help build the story of what was going to be good holistically, because ultimately, for me personally and Ray, was to do this correctly, not just for a financial gain for the company. Because if we're looking at pieces of it, then and ignore the holistic nature of what we need to do, we'll end up violating something at some point. And then you have not been a good servant or steward at that point. You have to be honest about what you're going with.
So Ray talks about very vocally in his book and in a lot of his talks, that spirit of the chess moment, that
Yes.
moment when he realized he had to make a change.
Yes.
Have you experienced a moment like that?
Through him, I was not in the gathering of that first meeting, but I was with him for other reasons within a few days of that proclamation. And to see him explain that we've created this mess, not necessarily Interface itself, but industry has, and again, not from a perspective of pure destruction. No, there was never an intent to do so. We just took the world for granted. We just took natural resources as being unlimited. Accounting principles, rules still hold the rules of unlimited natural resources. We know that is not the case anymore. But I didn't have that perspective, and many of my peers didn't. So my first encounter with Ray was, okay. And then he says, it's okay, sport. You'll get it. And I went, yes, sir. But I would say that was the catalyst of making me think about it. And probably similarly to being a cradle Catholic, a lot of us don't get that come to Jesus moment. Mm-hmm. We get Jesus in bits and pieces in life, and we start connecting them, and we see that this is the way. And I would say that was my journey. I appreciated Ray's spear in the chest, and he was a Baptist. So he definitely fit the model of the spear in the chest moment.
Okay, so it wasn't a bolt of lightning.
No.
It wasn't an aha. It's more like little giggles along the way.
It really
you know?
was. And,
Okay.
and working within my business, and then starting to talk about it amongst our children and my wife, and where could we make a difference, and then passing it on to friends that we knew through our children's schools, and so on and so on and so on.
So Ray had this belief that the earth and all of its living systems were in decline. And he said that business and industry were the only institutions wealthy enough and pervasive enough to reverse that.
Yeah. And so because we were the cause, he believed that we had to be the solution for that. And so he also was co-chair of Bill Clinton's climate initiative when he was in office. So he saw how government worked. And he was very appreciative of the government wanting to do the right thing, but he realized that's not going fast enough. And he was a man of faith, and he saw the church, but he never heard anything in church about what was happening there. So he realized it had to start with business and commerce, and that's what he was. He was a businessman. Therefore, let me be a role model for how business can do this, is really how that term came about. But we can be the most effective because the reality is necessity is the mother of all invention.
That's right.
And therefore, that has been the catalyst for most businesses. Somebody comes up with an idea. How can I commercialize that? And it's for a benefit. Yes, there's a profit to that, to the individual, but there's also a beneficial gain, whatever the product or service is, to the consumer. So it's a give and take, just the way nature is too.
Is there a message for the small business owner? He kind of looked at this as a large business organization, but what about the small business owners?
No different. I mean, probably the best example I can give for a small business owner is in their supply chain. As they grow and become more important to suppliers, well, that gives them the leverage to actually start shopping suppliers. Well, we were no different in Interface. I mean, that was one of the first places we went, was to look at our supply chain and find out what they were doing and saying, we're on a journey that within a very short period of time, we are going to determine the supplier based on, from an environmental perspective, what they are doing and the criteria that will make our product better, as well as what we have stated, what we want to do, be true. And a small businessman can do the same thing. And it can be just as simple as reducing their waste in whatever their particular process is. It can be, as I said earlier, with the supply chain. It can be also asking their customer how much they value a better way of doing it, and what extra price, if there is one, would they be willing to pay for it. And if there is no extra price they would pay for it, then that challenges the owner to seeing what he can do himself or herself for what they produce or what they're yielding, and create an added value for that same price.
This podcast is part of a project of the Laudato Si Initiative, and you're one of our sponsors, one of our contributors to the Laudato Si Initiative. Share with me why. Why did you make that decision?
Well, I was excited to see my church, the Roman Catholic Church, take an initiative, a leadership initiative in the area of the environment. And I've been very fortunate to have a front row seat in that anybody can get involved, and it's for the right reason. You might not be into tree hugging, but you do care. No one wants to live in a bad environment. No one wants to live in a bad environment. At the same time, they can make a difference. And if it's for a better product, we're going to be a roadmap for it. And now I'm seeing the church say to everyone, we need to make this a value add in our faith. It's a part of our faith to value what the earth is to mankind. It's our home. He is the creator. He's given it. We now have, through science, enough information to know that nature can take care of itself and had taken care of itself without any help from mankind. Therefore, mankind needs to wake up and realize that a lot of the solutions to mankind's challenges are right there in front of us, right there in Mother Nature. And finally, we have a significant body that represents about 1/7 of the world's population that can be significant.
That's amazing to hear that personal testimony of yours. This time has gone by so quickly today, and we thank you so much for being with us.
This has been really refreshing. Thank you for coming onto the show. Thank you for your past support, your present support, and hopefully you find it in your heart for future support.
Absolutely.
And what we're doing. And please know that Ray Anderson's his DNA is in a lot of policies that I worked at. Even before I knew who he was and who you are, his DNA is all through the policies of California, which is being spread all over the United States. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for all that you do.
You are very welcome.
Listeners, I want you to stay connected with us on social media and share your journey with the hashtag faith and sustainability.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. We look forward to meeting you next week
at the intersection of faith and sustainability.
The preceding podcast is a production of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta. Copyright 2025.